Please go ahead, Geshe-la.
상기 저당 속에 좀은 장조바도 단에 자소치 다기 신속히 배송하게 돌아가면 저 상계 쪽으로 쇼고 상계 저당 속에 좀은 장조바도 단에 자소치 다기 신속히 돌아가면 저 상계 쪽으로 저 상계 저당 속에 좀은 장조바도 단에
Adonai Kapsachi
배송하게 돌아가면 저 상계 쪽으로 쇼
Pasho.
관계 도생이 손에 따고 단지 빵배시 담배시는 데서 고담 대라 차세 아야 제도에
Lao de gidu ganda.
음 당서 들으실래 코안 도츠 싫어 코아 코로와서데 단 도고레스 간디지를 코아시그레 간디지 도고레 베스케 계지 용되거다
So,
음
so now where we are now on the page 54. So the way to reverse samsara. So first we have to know what means samsara and the way to discard that.
아 코아스라데 먼저 레다 뉴몽기 왕기 라메바 주마 체바지 조대냐지라 좋아 드레지라 코스라
So then when we mean samsara, when we speak about samsara, it means that we against our own will, by the power of karma and afflictions, we have to suffer again and again. We have to take rebirth again and again.
다들아 예와르 치상 덴데 야라 중니 세트체 다데 먼저 사람만 불랍사이 좋아 디제라
And then though we can explain the samsara according to the 12 links of dependent origination, of course, and we spoke quite a lot of times about that.
다 코와 델레 단다갑데 가르시기 알았을라데 대양 캐베 대코나 영어에 내지 지마 지시 영문송도 통해 송디 편제게 레사도 미소바라 슬라데 다 코아제야게 레드 사그 마레스 다 가레스 간디스 사그 마레 슬라데 동바니스 영문송 통고야레스 다 동영문송도 통하니나 되네 코르자발라야 레드 사에 요마레스 되네 가인스나 동엘의 트러스다 코아들의 트레저와 되는 다 된다 코아들의 트레저 그래서 뭐다 코아들의 트레저 그래서
So here on the text, let's check. So the text says, so the manner of reversing samsara. Furthermore, since the sage, the wise, sees through direct perception the true mode of being exactly as it is, and because he does not accumulate new projecting karmas, he is free from suffering. Then what we mean here is that the wise persons are the ones who perceive directly reality as it is, and thanks to that they don't accumulate new projecting karma which otherwise would produce a new rebirth within samsara. So they don't do that because they have a direct perception of emptiness. And usually speaking, those projecting karmas make us take rebirth within samsara, but they don't accumulate such karmas. So thanks to that, we can say that they can be liberated from samsara or liberated from suffering.
이제 다 될라드네 우마 시잡에 나로라 아얀데와 간디 숨도 슬라데 아얀데 우마 시잡아 되게 나로라 유라스 되냐와 유라 다음에 토나는 시베사벤 가버린 주르스 유라스 타베라 차시마 유 가사다 어다 가사 데 풍부스 사마시다 가사다 가사 데 풍부스 다시 풍부들라 제시게래 가사다 가사 데 다시 풍부스 가사다 가사 데 다시 풍부 데 랑싱기 매바 통하니나 난 가사가 담에다 쳐가 담에 두가라 시는 거야. 다 유라 담에 통하니 다 라양 아 드니 에 가수다 나라도 데리다 시비 사변스러워.
Mm.
마리바세 숙침보다 게 그거도 좀 그랬어.当然在这里 유 가사다 가사 디 다시 풍부 다음에 봐도 무슨도 통하니나 레드 사이어 말했어. 시베 사베 코란 아 시베 코아게와라에 레드 사이어 말했어. 드네 전다 가인서 땐데 야라 중인 나한게 드네 머리 봐서 되게 왕게 드네 라메벨 펜제게 레시 사이어 드 레드 사이어 말했어.
Mm.
되게 시기하래. 제가 유라 담에 통하는서 유디 가사당 가사디 더시 풍부 다음에 봐 통하니 시비에 사베 머리 받은 가버린 죽으래서 죽기래서 라브레 마토지게 단다 교사가 계시게 말해 되네다 머리 받은 가에 고추 말해 세시로
Mm. And so here there is a quote from the Chatu Shataka Karika from Arya Deva. Then it says, when selflessness is seen in objects, the seed of existence is destroyed, becomes destroyed, we could say, like according to the literal meaning here. So when we say the objects, we can refer to the person itself, himself, herself, and so on, but also the basis of imputation of that person, yeah, the aggregates. So those aggregates and the person himself or herself are the objects, generally speaking. And when someone sees the selflessness of that person, and the selflessness of the basis of imputation of that person, so the aggregates, that person sees the selflessness of the person and the selflessness of phenomena. Yeah, so here, when it is done, when someone starts to see the selflessness of the person and of phenomena, then the seed of existence becomes destroyed. Yeah, so we could say like this, because there is no occasion for a strong state of ignorance to be there. Yeah, it is vanquished, we could say. It is destroyed by that wisdom which realizes directly emptiness. That wisdom has the power to destroy any occasion for a strong state of ignorance to be there. Yeah, so that's why here, when there is the direct perception of the selflessness of persons and of the aggregates, then there is no occasion to accumulate new projecting karma, because usually speaking, we accumulate a projecting karma, a karma which makes us take rebirth within samsara because of ignorance. But when there is a direct perception of reality as it is, so of emptiness, then there is no occasion to accumulate any projecting karma. Yeah, so so that's why here the text says the seed of existence becomes destroyed. Yeah, of course, it's not necessarily the case, and of course not the case for us, but at some point it will become the case. So that's why in Tibetan there is gyur. Yeah, it will become destroyed. It will be destroyed at some point.
제가 사바시로 코로나로라 몸로도 가르송고 간다송하라서나 말이 gabra girwanis. Shebe deni kombesos. What's it the rich son yare? Mari pasati gabra joyati. Tony to be shiroge, Tony konguya, teres, langa teres.
Mm.
Tony to be shiroke. Another Tony to be shiroke, shirop the compara, then Mariban gabrin jokers. Mariban gabra joyake, langa temo the yonares.
Mm. And also in the Madhyamaka Shastra, Nagarjuna himself will say in the root text that ignorance will become uh, uh, terminated, we could say, or will come to cease. Yeah, Gakpargyur in Tibetan. Yeah, Marikpa Gakpargyur. So ignorance itself will come to cease. So that's the same process here. Yeah, because thanks to the wisdom which realizes emptiness, then ignorance, which is the opposite state, will come to cease at some point.
Daya, Mashigebe Nalola, think the rich yore. Tenji, da, Tenjin Devon Juane, Tona Timun Jumin gets a teacher. Da, Carsuwa Resana, Tenji Devon Juane, Tonas, Timu de Timu Mariba de Young Mares, Timu Jumin Jurus. Tenji Devon Juan, Sadiladi, Dai Anja, Tomba Yitara Laguere. Chun di tamche rangshingi Tombare isna, Teme Ramachangi Tombare. 탐제 뚜루레스 때네 주바레 때메 라마체가 똥바레스 어드네 토나 네즈 데네 셰바이나 티무 머리바데 용기 마레스 토나 티무 종민도스 어드네 시자바 코로나냐 아 피드네 요레
Mm. And also in another part of the 400 stanzas from the Bodhisattva Aryadeva, the Chatusataka, then there is that stanza or that part of a stanza which says when there is when we observe the dependent origination, then confusion will not arise. Yeah, so here dependent origination has a meaning of emptiness. Yeah, that's the meaning of emptiness here. And of course the emptiness of inherent existence of any phenomenon, so the emptiness of intrinsic existence of phenomena. And because any phenomenon exists dependently, yeah, so in relationship to something else. So there is no phenomenon which could exist without depending on something else. So that's why when someone realizes the profound meaning of dependent origination, then there is no confusion yet. There is no confusion which arises in his or her mind. So that's another part of the Chatushataka.
드네 저 뷰타발리타 나나 드네 로베 상기장 저 뷰타발리타 나라라야 아다 대다 배 시부지 대만 라고 송요래 계시스 다 계시든 땡지 저런 중요 세대로 땡지 저런 중요 세대 시베 나와데 다 전다 간스나 동바이 통we 시로고 나와데 깨바 이나스 거다 대때무 민바데 세주 그래 세 송요래
So there is another quote from the Buddha Palita Vritti from Acharya Buddha Palita, who commented the Madhyamaka Shastra as well. And he says, when there is the light of the dependent origination, then the darkness of ignorance has no occasion to rise. Yeah, so to arise. So here, this cognition which realizes emptiness, it realizes dependent origination, the very meaning of dependent origination, which is emptiness. So when there is that kind of realization, it's like the light which eliminates the darkness of ignorance.
ngātsa, tā tū sāng tāng jē, tēne, tā ngā tsō yu lā, tā mē bāng, tēng jī tōg rō chōng wā sī rā, tōng yā tē, kā tsū sāng jī kē chē pō rē tō wē, tēne ngā tsō, tā yā nā yāng tō tī tō lā sāng tāng kō yā rē, kā yī sī na, tōng yī tōng wē lā, tā tōng tā, tōng bā yī tōng wē shī rō tē lā, chī kū lā, tēne ngā tsō, 마리발라 속에 견탄제 세게 니버디 야르 마도 셴다지 난저게 베라차샤바이나 장주구셈 공바다 진소 파르드 침바 셴다라 창바 가저 장샤바 이네양 니모드다가 자원의 매버 수투에 랑가데 요 말레스 다 장주구셈 공바세도 쉬우시게 셴보레 소나무소 빡도 매버 사도 그래 제데 이네양 뉴무가 사변 pontu고 말했어. 뉴무가 사변 pon야 돼. 다 돈이도 싫어 바실을 하래 그래서.
So here that's why to see the selflessness within objects is so important. Yeah, to see the dependent arising is so important, and we need to reflect on that again and again. Yeah, because that's the only way that wisdom which realizes emptiness is the only state of mind which can eliminate ignorance and its defilements. Yeah, so there is no other way. Like, for instance, if we speak about bodhicitta, if we speak about the other perfections like generosity, forbearance, and so on. So those cannot at all discard the afflictions at their root. They cannot cut the seeds of the afflictions. So of course they are so important. Bodhicitta is very important. It helps to accumulate a tremendous amount of merits, and it is very useful and very important. We cannot do without that. Still, it is not able to abandon the seeds of the afflictions. Only the wisdom of emptiness is able to do so.
맞아. 셰스모 따라체. 봐. 시베 사베 머리바테. 샤다 머리바테. 되네. 쳐놈 달즈마다. 쳐놈 슬라데 머리바테 가사다. 가사데 더시 풍부스라 차와이나 레라메도. 데니가 되네 딱도 두번 징기어서 라오네 여번 징기어스. 다도 징벨로 텔라스. 드란 딘데게 랑싱게 다도 징벨로스나 랑싱게 여번 징벨로 텔라스 뭐다. 로델라 되네 다 매버 통을 냅시르스나. 네바 데라 네게디 다메 통을 로 치부레스. 다음에 돈을 때 치부가 내두고 정신 나왔다고 때 치부가 내두고 마다 신다가 내가 말해서 되게 시기라 내가 실 대다르스 다음에 돈을 때 되니 말이방 고고 그래 말이방 고바당 대다 말이방 가발래 가베 두직 레데 사야메 차도 그래 두직 레데 가도 그래 두직 레든 가도디 수고다 텐데 치마치마나 랑슈군 가도 그래 슬라이인데 좀 말이 받 가고도 와 서로
So here the text says this is because the seed of existence is the consciousness which grasps the self. Yeah, so the self-grasping cognition, we could translate like this. Yeah, it's easier. So the consciousness which grasps the self of all phenomena. And this self-grasping cognition is counteracted by the cognition that perceives selflessness. As we said just before, when we speak about that cognition which realizes the selflessness or emptiness of the person and the basis of imputation of the person, which are the aggregates. So that cognition is the only one which is able to counteract the state of mind which grasps at the self of the person and of the phenomena. Yeah, there is no other way, as we said. So that cognition which realizes emptiness is able to counteract, and there is no other cognition which is able to do so. Yeah, as we said before. So then the text goes on. Thus, the cognition that perceives selflessness eliminates ignorance, and through the cessation of ignorance, formations cease. Yeah, the second link, karmic formations. Yeah, and because of the ceasing of the karmic formations, then naturally the other links will be discarded. Yeah, so that's why the sentence just after says the cessation of formations or karmic formations naturally entails the cessation of every subsequent link. Yeah, so by their own power, we could say Rangshuk, and naturally, if one link is abandoned, then the subsequent links would be abandoned as well.
인디지 랍샤바이나 마리방 가도디스 다 마리방 가야데 동이 통해 셔바 된 가고도 왔어 동이 통해 다 셔바 지구게 마리방 가토 그래 대신다게 가토고 말했어 고토고 말해 내가 수토고 말했어 다 마리바든 가베 된 두지기 레 사이메 찬로 마리 두지기 레든 가토 그래
So this ignorance, the self-grasping ignorance, can be eliminated or discarded by the wisdom which realizes emptiness. As we said, there is no other cognition which is able to do so. So once ignorance is eliminated, then naturally the karmic formations will be eliminated as well.
다 두지기 레드면아 두지기 레든 거기면아 남식 텐데데 런신 가도 그랬어
Then, if there is no karmic formation, then naturally also the third link, consciousness, will be eliminated.
단 남식 텐데든 가와이나 민수기 텐데다 민수 지리베 텐데스라 그래 토마르 민수기 텐데든 가도 그랬어 민수기 텐데든 가와이나 계제 두 텐데든 가도 그래 계제 두 되면 원부 두 스로다 되네 되네 뭐 텐데든 가도 그래 된 가나 제베 텐데든 가도 그래 제베 텐데 가나 소원 가도 쇠 텐데든 가도 그래스
So when consciousness ceases, then naturally also the name and form will cease naturally. Yeah. So name and form on the aggregate, and also when name and form will cease, of course, the six sources will also cease. Or the sources are the inner sources, yeah, the faculties, the powers. So they will cease naturally. And if they cease, then contact will cease as well. And if contact ceases, then feelings will cease as well.
된 가나 세베 텐데든 가 된 가나 세베 텐데든 가도도 렘베 텐데든 가도 그래 되네 시바 가도 그래 시베 텐데 신가 대주도 딱겨와다 거신가스 텐데 야라 종이데 두스가 가도 그래 대다 리바랑은 가도에게 남샤 대탕제 와다 유라 타네 토나니 시베 사벤 가브르 주르서 다메 바스 가사게 다메 바도 추게 다메 바도 또나 된 가도 그래 세워다 도스가래 당 짜와 당부 송야 드리마
And then if there is no feelings, so feelings having ceased, then craving will cease as well. And because of the ceasing of the link, which is craving, the eighth link, then the ninth link, appropriation or grasping, will cease as well. And because of that, then the 10th link, which is becoming or existence, will also cease. And because existence will cease, then birth and as well old age and death, they will all cease. So this process of the ceasing of the links is due to the direct perception of the self. So that's why here we have the quote, when selflessness is seen in objects, then the seed of existence is destroyed. So, as we said, yes, that's the only way, yeah, to eliminate that. And we see also in the root text, the last stanzas explain that, yeah, when one ceases, the others as well will cease.
大的那这我的俺的早的嘛是老什么？早的那老的，天当天能感觉呗，天当天能我民众是，东安碰碰不西不，天呢天到阳当卡是现在他也拉最近不对，当他写的，俺们干嘛了？天呢起码干过的是，给这得写不来。
So that's why here the root text of the Madhyamaka Shastra says, so that's the last stanza of the chapter 26, when it says, when this and that comes to an end, this and that are not created. The whole mass of sorrow is then entirely abandoned. Yeah, as we said, if the first links are come to an end, then necessarily the subsequent links will come to an end as well.
当马里邦嘎耶个特别嘎的是，马里邦嘎完去特别嘎的是了，因的，对呢，点这个头上班的是，看是呢，就这个点这是几个上班，吃些了对个点这是几个上班，都被往个下上去，俺到时了点的大上去，我点这个点这个人吧，对的了，样样上班了点呢。看是呢，人性的动吧是上当过呀嘞。但这个南晓得了，上了马达了，人性的动是的，来土样嘛，上了当来土样嘛的。
And so that's the only way, yeah, to discard ignorance. Yeah, we need to reflect on dependent arising. So when we speak about dependent arising, it has different meanings. Yeah, pratitya, samutpada has different meanings. So the dependent arising, which depends on causes and conditions, the dependent arising, which depends on parts, and the dependent arising, which depends on mere imputation, mere conceptual imputation, which is done according to a basis of imputation. So we have to think again and again on those points in order to understand the emptiness of intrinsic existence or inherent existence. Otherwise, there is no way. So there is no way to understand emptiness if we don't reflect on dependent arising.
别人的，俺这东尼光是别告诉，东尼了上了当，东尼写个特别节是来人的，人家明显等这个头上了当的嘞是。
Yeah, so in order to meditate on emptiness, it's necessary that we think and reflect and meditate on dependent arising.
家长啊，那么中国把给等这这边拿了，你得送下来。刚刚见了啥来吧？这的人心激动心思，觉得他的人吧也那样，见了啥来吧的，是叫那靠对住讲讲的是，他们对住人吧人的上，对面让我讲个动吧的是，刚刚见了啥来吧？这的人心激动心思，是吧？他见了啥来，就了啥来，吃些了啥来。多那看意思呢？东西拉上来，是就那个让来吧，人都是，可让马来呗，让我对面这住的那些民都是大些土儿嘛。
So that's why Lama Tsongkhapa says in the Tendal Toba, in the praise on dependent arising, that anything which depends on something else is necessarily empty of inherent existence. Yeah, so it means that when something is established depending on something else, then it's impossible to find that very phenomenon as inherently or absolutely or independently existent. Yeah. So when we say that something necessarily needs something else in order to exist, so as we said, we can speak about causes and conditions, we can speak about parts, and we can speak about a basis of imputation. So as long as something needs something else in order to exist, then we can for sure understand that it is totally empty of independent existence.
Sometimes they dog and nala Cindy, Casa, Kanshikele Keba Temagis.
Okay.
A Kanshikele Keba Temagi, Tela give Ranchi Germanis. That Karsugo is an Kinam Chashasam, Tendeja Tena Drubashi, Yimbayana. Could two breaths laguduas. Two breaths lade, Te Ranshingi Kawa Meva Ta Titamaris. Tela give Ranchi Germanis. Other than Chatan, Tene Drup Sajita. Tome rāngchāng rūga kāsā, tome rāngchāng rūsa kuñi tā, tētāng gāwā chāra wā. Chēs nā, tēngi nī dī kārsu wā tā, ngā ngē ngō sōng gāwā chāra īt. Ngō sōng gāi nian dī, tā tū rūp yinpā mā tā, tēnā rūpa chā mā tā, tā nā mē bā yin dī kāla, tā tēmā rāngchāng kī tōng bā rā īt chāna, tā dūska sōng rā.
And there is also a sutra spoken by the Buddha, the Anavatapta Nagaraja Paripricha Sutra, which says any thing that depends on causes and conditions is not born, is not created. And here there is no intrinsic production. Yeah. So the quote goes like this: if it depends on causes and conditions, it is not really born, it is not really created. There is no inherent production. Yeah, so it means that as long as something exists depending on something else, then it cannot inherently exist because to exist independence is directly contradictory with independent existence. Yeah, so because it is directly contradictory with that, as long as it exists depending on something else, it cannot at all exist without depending. So it cannot exist independently.
Tā dūchana, tūnsa dēchana tā ngānsu, Taiwan dēkyāng, ngānsu dēkyū Taiwan dēkyū dōgās, sūpa chī yīmbā yīne Taiwan dēkyū yārvās. Yīne ngānsu Taiwan dēwa nāshī chī Taiwan dē, ngānsu yī tsīmbē Taiwan chī yāngā mīndu gās. Ngānsu mīndu bātā dūngē rē dē, yīne dūngē dē, mīndu bē dūngē dē, gyū chēmā mē bāchī yōng dēkyū dōgās, ngānsu lā sēkyū mē bāchī yōng dēkyū dōgās. Te kāyāsi kār tēngi yorās, te kār tēngi yorās na, ngānsu ki tā tōnda maripā sēdi, mē bā sō mātū bā chik tā, maripā sēdi kāyāsi rā ngārānsu tā, mari kāsur tā, tōnda kāyāsi rā tōngpa nī sēdi rā tā tōsā māshē bē kēngi rēs tā tōnda, rwa? Tōngi rā tōsā māshē bā yīndi kāma, Maripati se tu yamare. Maripati se motoba yinduza. Nanzolo kwasi de. Ta tu takto yore. Nanzon doa ri tu kaba keba yino. Kwa di nyamdo yebare ta. Tene nanzo kwa dele. Nanzo dunge, minduwe dunge de chilo ne yungu mindus. Kaisa dunge ki pumpi tke. Kaisa gyue dunge ta. 차바 가서 되는 동해게 동해 당 되니 규로 동해니게 때 차바 도지게 동해서 돼 뒤도 남았고 나가서 냠도 깨는 뭐 쉬어도 냠도 있어 Te yoba yinda tena kwaasa la guyaras. Kwaa te yoba yinda san ta karcha resna. Nganzo debe dewa de me, mindu be dunga dega de, nganzo kadu yina yongde, nizu deres.
And so the text says, okay, just after the quote here. Now, although we yearn for happiness, it eludes us. And although we do not wish to suffer, suffering persists endlessly, like ripples on the surface of water. Yeah, so here, of course, we all wish to be happy. There is no one which doesn't have that wish. Yes, still, we wish to be happy. We are never satisfied anyway. Yeah, we cannot be satisfied with an everlasting happiness because suffering arises again and again with no discontinuation, we could say. Yeah, so we have to suffer as long as we are ignorant. When we have ignorance in our continuum, then we have to suffer. And because we never really studied or reflect on emptiness, so that's why we could not discard ignorance within our own continuum. Yeah. So that's why samsara is always with us. Anywhere we go, any type of rebirth we take, then we have to live with suffering. Yeah. Anyway, yeah, because suffering doesn't arise from the outside. Yeah, the very root of suffering doesn't remain outside of us. The very root of suffering is within us because we have those appropriated aggregates, and because we have the omnipresent suffering, then depending on that suffering, which we can call samsara itself, we necessarily have to encounter the other types of suffering, the manifest suffering, the suffering of change, and so on. Yeah, so we always have to experience suffering as long as we have this ignorance, as we said. So of course we wish to be happy and we don't desire suffering, but we have to live with suffering because it belongs to our continuum in one sense, as long as we have those aggregates.
Deso,
No.
aadosha. Tende yindi, ta nganzo ki mindu be dunga de chilo ne nyungu yina nganzo tuan rosa chiyares. Ta di tanda dresa meba da kayansa nganzo kawa dhona nganzo pumbu di nyamso dhogo yindi sa, de shana nganzo dresa yang mares. Tena nganzo re, ta chilo ke motu rachi yang ba yina, te tene shi tuan rosa eksachi. Rwa? Wa sashi dili namshi dhangu shivish dosina, namshi tuan shayjila pa tuan rosa eksachi. namshi dēla tsāwa shivi dōsa, namshi tāngsā chīla chōyō rāsi, tēndē shī yōng sēgi rā bās. Yīne dūngi kī pūpū dēla chōsā chīla mīndō sū wā tā, kāpa lēnā dārā yōng dōs.
So here that's why the text says, okay, if these torments came from an external source, then we could simply flee from them. Yeah, but if it is asserted that these aggregates constitute the basis of suffering, there is no escape. Yeah, so of course, like for instance, yes, if the very source of miseries is outside of us, then we could just flee. We could just go somewhere else. Like for instance, you are in a country which is in war. Yeah. So in that case, then you could go somewhere else. And if you are in a place where the weather is very cold, then you can escape. You can go somewhere else in a sunny weather. And if it's too hot, then you can also escape. You can go somewhere else when it is a little bit more fresh. So because those conditions are external to us, but the very root of suffering is our aggregates. And everywhere we have to go with those aggregates. So that's why there is no escape from suffering as long as we have those aggregates.
나야 나도 사 되네 인도데 데가 송도 나 가발레 살아요 풍부데 여여봐 임베스 녀레요 풍부 딜라텐데 동네데스 풍부 데다 대화시 주나 동네라 타와마도 지스 풍부데 여봐 데스도 동네데 여여봐래 슬라인드가나 나저 코안들레 타에 탑시지 맞잖아 되네 가서 아 동네들라 타에 민두스 다정다 되는 것이 됐은 거야.
So that's why the text says, okay, so when we were threatened by communism and so on, it was possible to flee. However, wherever I go, these aggregates remain. And apart from attaining liberation from suffering, which occurs when a separation takes place between the aggregates and the suffering, dependent on the appropriated aggregates, as long as these aggregates exist, suffering will also exist. Yeah, so that's the only way to discard suffering is to discard the contaminated aggregates. Otherwise, then we have to encounter suffering again and again.
아드셔. 풍부대야 란주기 다 지수 풍부대 여봐 대수도 드네 동네대 여봐 예. 풍부대양 소수 주기 다 란주기 드네 셔봐 머리베 샤마도 송아레스 머리베 샤마도 송아레스라디 미셔다 지금 머리베 샤마도 송스게면 소수 주기 샘니모 머리바디 샤마 침바레스 아 대샤마도 송 왕기 드네 레드 사기야레스 레드 사네 드네 풍부들이 중국야레스 지스랑줄로 예베 머리바디 네버 수모도 디스도 들 보통은 풍부 코르디 다 배들 냠도 예바레스 거다.
So here the text goes on. So we are on page 55. Yeah, of course. Sorry, I didn't mention that. And okay, the text says, so as long as these aggregates exist, suffering will also exist. And because these aggregates arose from the karma accumulated under the weight or under the power, yeah, I should correct that in the text, under the power of ignorance in our mental continuum, as long as we are unable to put an end to this ignorance that remains in our continuum, we will have to bear this burden of the aggregates against our will. Yeah, so it depends on the ignorance which belongs to our continuum for now. So far, we could say, yeah, it is not by the power of something else or another human being, for instance. Yeah, it is depending on the power of the afflictions and mainly on the power of ignorance that we have to suffer again and again.
되게. 다 된대 인도 다 만져 가야서 다한 녀모 세워 되더라. 다 알아서 규규되는 녀모 봐 머리 봐 세워 되다. 매바 소야지 요리가 말해 세티가 내가 될 투바다. 소규게다 메스. 가사도 될 투예스. 봐.
So we are on the last sentence, which is translated for now. I'm sorry. And then the text says, is it thus possible or not to put an end to what are called afflictions? This is a crucial point. Yeah, that's the main point here, is to check if it is possible or not to discard the afflictions.
아주 카도데 셔봐야나. 아주 녀모라 세 투그레 세셔봐. 세 투그레 세고 이게 경제 가려서나 안줄라 녀모 세베 탑 차상 이제 상기 좀 되게 안줄 때네 요레스. 녀모데 마 다 세벌 지역이 텁지 차사시 된셔 랑가 차사시 된셔 그랬어.
So, yes, we can say 100% sure that we can uh, eliminate, discard the afflictions. Yeah, because all the teachings given by the Buddha are done for that. They are all methods for us, all different ways and means for us to discard, to eliminate all the afflictions.
얘네 이제 상기 좀된 대기 알아서 섬제 남라 툭세와 침부 쉬어정원에 먼저 남기다 뜬거로 관계 툭세 예수는 따와 편집반배질 담배 쉬운 돈도 막 고담들로 차세로 쓰지나가서 다들 딱 봤을 때 대대 되래 가에서는 따와 편집반배칠 따와 데 가래서는 유모디 쪼다 머리반에 집에다 유모도 따와 두자 되게 되래 좀된 대기 투스 신병 안에 따와 년바 되게 돼 뽕예게 채도 알아들어 란도로 그네 진짜 말로 봤을 때 샤이스 제가 된대 땡게 때마 상계 주는데 나저기 때문에 터도도 차고 준비 되니스
So here, that's why the Buddha has a very great compassion towards us. Yeah, when he gives those teachings in order for us to discard all those wrong views. Yes, that's exactly the stanza that we recite at the beginning of the teachings. Yeah, that's the very last stanza of the Madhyamaka Shastra. Yes, Sarvadrishti, Prahanaya, Yahasa, Dharmavadeshayat, and so on, or in Tibetan, Kangi Tuzen is in the Tawa Tanje Bawaji, Damejuni Denze Bego Damdela Chatselo. Yeah, I pay homage to Gautama, who, moved by compassion, taught the holy Dharma in order for us to eliminate all the wrong views. Yeah, so that's exactly the point here. Uh, this great compassion of the Buddha makes him teach any ways and means for us to discard all those afflictions which are totally discordant with reality. Yeah, those views, yeah, drishti or tawa, yeah, those wrong views which create all the sufferings that we encounter again and again. So through this reason, we can assert that the Buddha is the final object of refuge.
근데 나랑스 상계 좀된 데라 닝 타반에 되네 차 세워다 접수 치워다 쇼바 뭐하러서 봐 근데 저거 제 얘기들은 아 경제 양다시게 생각으로 근데 제 얘기 경제 양다시게 가리어서는 알아서 랑게트 탈신벨람 란도 탈신벨람도 땜바자마자 신도 탈신벨람 진지 말로 봤다 샤스 근데 땜바 제겐기 상계시게도 봤대 땅한 직접네 터두레스
And so this is the perfect reason which proves that the Buddha is worthy of prostrations and offerings, and he is the very source of refuge. Yeah, so that's a perfect reason which proves that because he could how do we say he could mm, uh, mm, sorry, he could accomplish finally, and he could accomplish his own goal and the goal of others. Yeah, so he could accomplish that in a perfect manner. So that's why he is a true source of refuge.
제당 안zul라 상기 존대 되게 투자와 정보 시비정원에 라신게 등이 표준 소바지 표준 소바 주에게 람 상보대 양다바대 좀된 되게 안zul라다 친지 말로 때데 가래서 좀된데 코라 등이 표준 소바 쓰면도다 란데 탈신 신데 탈신데 감사레스
So yes, he is the one who has very powerful compassion, very strong compassion, a great compassion, and who could progress on that path for the sake of all the beings. And on that path, then he could accomplish perfectly his own goal and the goal of others. Yeah, so he could accomplish that perfectly and in a perfect way.
제가 아 말아서 코알레 저 전도 니가 감사해스. 나서 동해라 탄도 이가 감사니. 나서 땐도 대화 된도게 감사해스. 된도게 땐도 대화 된도다. 동해 교다 쳐봐라. 때네 나서 탄도 이어봐 인도서 된도게 동해 교다 쳐봐라. 타로에 탑되다. 땐도 대회게 탑 차상하지 좀 된대게 만원하지 않줄라. 아, 때나발 제가 인도다가 땜바 좀 된댔을 해야 되다. 땜바 무슨 봐. 땜바 신뢰 캐도 봐봐. 세우데. 당한도 된대지네. 겹스 조에 유양 좀 된대 된대지 인생다라고 했어.
And so we are individuals which necessarily wish to discard suffering. Yeah. And this is a natural wish, a natural aspiration to get liberated from sufferings. And we necessarily wish to be happy. Yeah, so we wish to discard the sufferings and their causes, and we wish to be happy. And those methods to accomplish that are perfectly provided by the Buddha in a very correct manner, in a very efficient manner. Yeah, so that's why he taught that. That's why we call him the teacher. Yeah, Tomba, Chomdende, yeah, the teacher, the Bhagavan. Yeah, so that's why he is superior to any other teacher.
네. 다들 드라마 먹고 라이도 달에 대해서. 다들 내내 인도 인도 당한도 뉴모 뽕 투에가 나가시도가 시더라. 뽕 투그래 봐. 저는 가서 뽕 투그래. 뽕 투에가 가서 경제 먹고 쉬어쉬었다. 초시해지는 두 산다. 나라서 생세시리베 시더라. 생세리디 가인스는 뉴모 받게 돼. 참아 생세리디 데라 되는 거. 걔 루부도 쳐봤다. 되게 안장 차대기 알았어. 제가 루부 교체인데 루부도 중샤바지 임바 연도 생그랑신의 쇼민도 생그랑신 왜세버스. 딜상 따바이네 알아서 심규 대당 깽기 루부 되게디 체중도 요레스. 루부 교체되가라 님부 따당 데마지 깨외 람디 차선시 상에 좀 되게 안절 깨요. 소 상당다 치 두가를 당거래.
So yes, of course, we could speak more about those points, but to come back to the point of the afflictions, is it possible to abandon fully the afflictions? Yes, the reply is yes, and there are reasonings proving that. So we need to check those reasonings. We have to check the fact that the very definition of mind is to be clear and knowing, clear and cognitive by nature, we could say. Yeah, so that clear and knowing nature of the mind cannot be fundamentally polluted or defiled by the afflictions. Yeah, so it can be separated from the afflictions. Yeah, because the afflictions are adventitious. Yeah, they don't belong to the very nature of mind. Yeah, so because they don't belong to the very nature of mind, which is clear and knowing, and they arise depending on some causes and conditions, then we can make sure that the clear light nature of mind can be separated from the afflictions, from all defilements. Yeah, so that's why we can say that mind can be separated from the defilements. And of course, for that we need to use the antidotes of those afflictions. If we don't do that, then nothing will happen. So those antidotes have been provided, have been taught by the Bhagavan himself. Yeah, he taught us all the ways and means to do so.
계산 뉴몬바 세대다. 뉴모 대강 뉴모 대왕계 중월래 세대 루부기 견실했어. 생게 세리가 란체스 여봤다나 말해서 루부기 견실했어. 다 루부기 견실 인바 인데상 디 안저 둘을 잡아 차봤나 신이스. 둘을 잡고 망고 차인데 들 추리자는 다에 지어로서 그때나 진짜네 난지 길라 터바다 삼바다 고마치베 싫어 르마나게 깨발라 때는 대 추리자 해납치랬다. 추리자가 나신 싫어. 근데 쟤네 나라도 뉴모디게디 고아도 그리 뉴모디게 세트고도 뉴모디게 매버 소트 그래잖아. 대세고야. 뉴모디게는 안저 장모디니. 깽모디게디니. 깽디게디 매버 소야다. 대탑대 다 춘들로 토바다 삼바다 공부지 랑가되니 있어.
And then, yeah, yep. So, depending on the afflictions, yeah, the karma that we accumulate and so on, all the activities, negativities, and so on, all those are adventitious. They are adventitious defilements. Yeah, they don't belong to the very nature, the clear and knowing nature of our mind. Yeah, so they are adventitious. It's like, when you have a cloth and you put it in the mud, for instance, then you can still clean it again and again. Yeah, so depending on studying, reflecting, and so on, we can cultivate a wisdom, which is a kind of laundry. The wisdom is the kind of laundry. Yeah, thanks to that, we can purify again and again our mind, exactly as you can cleanse your clothes that has fallen in the mud. Yeah, so we can eliminate all those adventitious afflictions. This is possible. Yeah, this is possible as long as we use the antidotes like studying, reflecting, and so on. This is the way.
때라샤샤나 나라스 어디 민딩 내게 잔이 세답시. 언남시 내 하상 독사 독사는 누구 독사지. 실로지 누구야 봤어. 된대기 깽게 차게 깽자 강한 인배 대양 자원 중고대 소소가 동행기 풍부들이 여봐 인데서 깽들이 쳐봐. 동행기 풍부들이 중고대 말해봐래. 계속 말해봐도 쌍만 차대 얘는 실로가 다되면도 남식이 전화라 누기면도 다 전화 내가 동행기 풍부들이 여마 또 된다.
So, like for instance, when we call another person as an enemy, for instance, we say, "Oh, this is my enemy," and so on. Or if we think, "Oh, the weather is so bad; it is too cold," and so on. Those defects, we could say, they find their very origin within our aggregates, we could say. Yeah, because our aggregates, our contaminated aggregates, have a reason because of ignorance. Yeah, so because of that, we necessarily have to encounter unpleasant situations. But one day, if we discard fully ignorance, then we will never find any enemy outside. We will never be annoyed by the bad weather and so on.
아저씨. 나도 저 살로 nen데 싶다와니나 드네 간저게 장모마데 수수 심주도 여바테 이 신앙아 저 셔트에 쉬어다게 심규기 뉴몬 딜레 타도체 맞잖아. 탑신랑아 민도세제 시토에 예den가지. 다 디토 심규기 소소 심기 견인 바 연도 심기 견인 그때 심기 연den기 토네 매버 소여라마도 치료는 매우 서는도가 심을 연대게 보여. 심을 연대게 가능해서 퇴산 공성기 실험도 깨보고요. 대라 때는 퇴산 공성기 실험 개발할 때는 생기 견디 셈고요. 어딘데 지나다 투사대 소수 셈 투여받지. 생기 견디가 세야 투사 소수 셈기 연대 개발 투여받지. 어두스가 다 시도 살다고 했는데 셨어.
Mm. And so, mm, if we really think about those points very carefully, we will see that in fact there is no enemy outside of us. There is no real enemy outside of the continuum of our mind. Yeah, the true enemy is the defilement. Yeah, the very true enemies are the defilements in our mind. So if we don't discard those true enemies within our mind, then there is no way to escape the unpleasant situations that we can encounter outside. Yeah. So the only way to discard those defilements is to produce the qualities, to increase the qualities of our mind. And we cannot do that without the wisdoms arisen through study, reflection, and meditation. Yeah, those types of wisdom are the only way to discard all the defilements within our mind, because everything resides within our minds, we could say. Yeah, the defilements are within our minds and the qualities also. So that's why we need to think carefully about those points.
원아 사지. 타르바가 셔바드 지르시 인셔나스. 타르바스를 가래스. 타르바스도 다 단지 셔들이. 나라서 생기 견셔송스. 생기 연대 셔송스. 생기 연대 생기 견데 세토는 더 타르바레스. 타르바스 치료는 제가 드라이면도스. 타르바스의 수수 생기 견데라 타르고스. 다 견게 자오 머리바들 머리발라 타르고스. 대라 레다 뉴무 세베 타르스네. 다 와니 튕기래. rabchi choke be nalo gomuludu ge wotsu le da nyumu sebe tars te tarba se oteres ta le da nyumu seba de tarba yina le da nyumu kane sa ro susu simju de se ko semla le da nyumu me da so ko ta semla le da nyumu me wo so simju ge yende ke bala de me wo so ge ma to chi 탑 shen chun me. Yonde kye di kare, chen di de wo chila ta toba da samba da gomba che langa dire. Right?
And so here we are on the bottom of the page 55. And okay, so I cannot just read the Tibetan like this, translated in English. So you will have, of course, the English translation later. And so the question is, what means liberation? Yeah, what means liberation? We could say that liberation is the elimination of all the defilements in our mind because of the production of the qualities within our minds. Yeah, the liberation doesn't exist outside of us. Yeah, liberation is, we could say, exists within someone when ignorance, the defilement of ignorance has been eradicated. Yeah, that's why there is the quote from the chapter 28, the stanza number 5, where Arya Nagarjuna says, Karma Klesha Kshayan Moksha. Yeah, the ceasing of karma and afflictions is liberation. Yeah, leda nyomo sebe tar. Yeah, so this is very important here. So we that just means that liberation is a state where all the afflictions and all the contaminated karma have ceased. Yeah, and how do they cease? They cease by way of the production of the qualities of our mind. And those qualities can arise only through study, reflection, and meditation.
아야다 나란솔라 상기 좀된 대기 툭자와 전부 쉬어져고네 툭지 전부 쉬어져고네 다 가연스나 먼저 땡지적으로 주길래 랑가데 마테나 샤요 땡제 그 남샤데 때나요 코란스 땡중고 되데 세신 지다와신도 세시 타르친 말에 대라 되네 안졸라 땡중고 되데 루어메바다 안졸라 때나 요래 따tomba 대라 안저게 뭐네 되네 대라 타삼 치고 야래 대라 타삼 전에 소소 규기 레다 뉴모레 세고 야래 레다 뉴모 세디 대라 타삼 공바 제발라 때네 세고르마도 랑아심도 와스
So, as we said before, the Buddha has a tremendous compassion with regard to us, yeah, has a tremendous compassion because he could see himself the reality of dependent arising and at its utmost point, we could say, yeah, like perfectly, he could perfectly realize the profound meaning of dependent arising, and dependent on that, he could teach that to others in a very valid manner, yeah, in an incontrovertible manner, we could say. Yeah, so because of that, we have the capacity to listen, to reflect, and then on the teachings that he provided to us. And thanks to that, we can make sure that all the afflictions and karma can cease. Yeah, so it cannot cease with any other means that than studying and reflecting, yeah, as we said before.
제다다 대네 랍지 쪼개바네 숨바다르 인라 레다 뉴모 세베 타르세데 숨에데레 다 레다 뉴모 세데 레다 뉴모 세데 간에 숨여라세라데 랍지 니사주베 나라랑 탄다라로 좀 제사스데레 머리 집에 양스 칩사데 된다데레 텐데 야가 중요 숨바데라 와 덴마르셰베다 머리방 아 진짜 로든 집에 로 록시 대왕게 당한절라로 왕래 레사체 너 고고 숨고야래 내는 이 맞은 거 날려서 근데 이제 대답에 다당 풍부스 던지 당분이 셔야 되다 다 매바당 가사가 다 매바당 추게 다 매바스 쉬고요 다당 풍수 던데네 여봐 진배 가사가 던지다 추게 던지기 니게 유게 내줄래 도든 징게로 친질로도 징대요래 저거 딘데 그 친질로도 로 말해 봐 니부든 가니고요 다 가니야지 좀 전에 강아도라 댄셔야다
So, as we said, yeah, that quote from the chapter 18th, the stanza number 5, which says the ceasing of karma and klesha is moksha, is liberation. Yeah, so how do we know that? Then there is, of course, the very first stanza of the chapter 26 that we just studied. Yeah, Mari Dribe Yosichir. Yeah, the very first line of the very first stanza of that chapter 26. Yeah, because of ignorance there is rebirth. Yeah. So then that's why if we wish to discard any rebirth within suffering, we need to discard ignorance itself. Yeah, so that's why we've seen all the links of dependent arising. And then after we arrive on page 56. Yeah, so when there is an explanation of what means to cycle again and again in the samsara, and how we can discard that when we discard suffering, ignorance.
어떠세? 근데 가인스는 동료들이 싫어대 슬라데 동료들이 싫어대 가래 슬라인데 드니 그에 싸워 쳐셔들래 그와 싸워 매버 소연데 레스 그와 싸워데 매버 쓰나 가리용 거래 쓰나 땡 안아줘 화박이 제가 나질러 소베 깽그리 탐정 가도 그 데렸다 고알엔 도스로
Mm. So, yes, the wisdom of emptiness is the only state of mind which is able to cut the root of samsara. Yeah, because we are all samsaric beings who wish to discard any kind of suffering. Yeah, specifically the sufferings of birth, sickness, old age, and death. Yeah, so if we see the defects of those sufferings, then we will naturally wish to discard them. So we will wish to discard the root of samsara naturally.
네 대양 유기 뭐에 내주 지더러 여봐 대다도 때라 팝네 대셔바시 중나 슬라데 좀된 대기 만조라 드네 유기 뭐에 내주데 카레이마데 치마 치신도 다 못쳐봤다 세고 쉬었대요 내주 대셔바 이노스구나 천하간 내로 사데 내로 타투바다 셰바 이노 다 같이 그래서 그 진짜로 로도 진짜 로데 ramshugan 가도 그래서
So here on the third line of that page 56, which starts with Deyang. Yeah, so uh, if we understand, if we have a full realization of the way things are, yeah, then we can obtain liberation. So the meaning of that means is that any cognition which realizes the mode of abiding, the final mode of abiding of anything, of any phenomenon, then can make any distorted mind cease. Yeah, because that mind which realizes the very nature of things will counteract the distorted mind.
나한테네 빼나 딱 빼서는 셔봐야나 지든지 차와 알아주다 지든지 차와 딱 패바시 이나양 때 노르와다 주바실라 덴바니스 가서 라바 이나양 그 주마이 말하시 셔요 그랬어 코로나게 덴바이 뭐 가서 켜내셔봐 이나 그배 가서 켜봐 셔봐 이나양 그 라신게 그 따지 셔봐 이나 그 주마 전부 되는 그랬어 빼나 딜펜디샤도 개미기 배대 코란스 세인데 코란 먹고 니스 폼 다시 짠장 셔지 주마 짠장 셔지 돼요 그 루기다 그 대응원게 내가 삼았다 와이나 그 주마이 말은 시 도인 것도 왔어 빼드나 싫었어
So there is an example of that. Yeah, when something is wrong or something is false, we could say, you can advertise again and again that you speak true, then it will stay a lie anyway. Yeah, it cannot transform into something true because you make it you spread the word. Yeah, so like His Holiness is speaking about, the Chinese government that sometimes tell very big lies and they spread the word, but to spread the word doesn't mean that the lie will become true. That's not possible. If it is a lie, it's necessarily discordant with reality anyway. It will stay a lie. It will stay false.
어디 그래 더자 다 덴바시 이나서 뭐 이나지 임바 이나 뭐에 내지디 곧 뭐에 내지 힘바이 곧 내가 다랑 힘바이도 잡아채는 세르센 레지오레스 주마디 따나 랑싱기 여반 진데게 로디 그 랑싱 매발라 랑싱 여반 진데 야로스 대로 되게 유딜라 잡아채는도 그 미세 차도 그 다만 중국 돈도 해서 레스 계속 땜바지나 지금 제바 대성기 세르센 로고 그랬어
And also, when we speak about something which is true, yeah, something which is in accordance with reality, yeah. So the better you check, the clearer it will come. Yeah, if you investigate again and again, then if what you investigate is true, then it will become even more clear each time that it is true. Yeah. Contrary to the lie, like for instance, our ignorance believes that any phenomenon which never existed ultimately or truly exists like this. Yeah. So it is a lie. It is something fake. So the more you investigate, the more you will see it is fake. The more you will see it is false. Yeah. So it will not it will not become true as long as you investigate. On the contrary, you will see how false it is.
제가 별로 중요했어 땡지 세대로 땡지가 남샤 되게디 코 뭐에 내지지레스 대 경쟁의 순간이나 때문에 라운치도 여봤어야지 그런 신기 캐줘야지레스 로 때문에 라운치도 두바 슬라디 수간에 때문에 라운치도 두바 저 여구야래 이네 된대지 자원이나 다 민도사 예제 대셔레스 타마 뚜루레스 로
And so that's the same with dependent origination. Yeah, the explanation of dependent origination. That's reality as it is. Yeah, so if you use your many reasonings in order to double check if it is reality as it is, you will necessarily find that it is true. You will necessarily find that there is no phenomenon which could exist in an independent manner, yeah, without depending on something else, yeah. And so we are sure, we believe that things exist from their own side, they exist without depending on something else, yeah. But if you really check, if you investigate carefully, you will see that there is no such a thing. It's impossible. Because whatever exists necessarily exists depending on something else.
다 경제 대단스다 다돈 진별로데스 다돈 진별로서 어디 가인스나 가사가 던지다 쳐가 던지서 니들라라고요 다돈 진별로데스 가 다돈 진대요로서나 가사서도 풍부되나 다돈 서비스는 여바지 진대기도 풍부 차샤 가나에 때문에 라운지도 여바 진대기도 대라 가사가 던지스라 쳐가 던지스라 있는 내 풍부사대야 야 쎄. 아 풍부 루이 차인데 나도 땡지 루이도 차가면도 차샤로 떠버도 루이도 차가면도 또봐 샤상 그 땡지들 루이 차가면도 땡지 그 때문에 풍부 내 풍부스 루이 차인데 뭐 땡지 지금 때문에 라마셔도 두배 나도 풍부니까다가 네.
So here, depending on that, yeah, we could say that those states of mind, those cognitions which grasp the self, are totally discordant with reality. Yeah. So, like the way for a cognition to grasp at the self would be, for instance, for the person, yeah, to grasp the person, to believe, to think that the person could exist without depending on his or her aggregates, yeah, in an autonomous way, we could say. Yeah, but it is not possible, yeah. Still, our ignorance grasps the person like this. And for the self-grasping of phenomena, and the aggregates, mainly the aggregates, yeah, the aggregates, they don't appear as if they would exist depending on something else. Yeah, they appear as if they were inherently existent. Yeah, so they appear to our minds as if they would not depend on parts, not depend on this and that. Yeah, so of course this is totally fake. Yeah, but still, if we go in that direction, in the direction of this false appearance, then there is grasping at the self of phenomena. So that's why we have those two self-graspings at the persons and at the phenomena like the aggregates.
나들이 제가 다 간사게 다도 두번 짐바당 최게 다도 두번 짐은 짐바니부 되어로 로페셔바스들다스로 코란게 감 짐바데 싸우네 요마르다스 르봉고 라나시레스 이네 코란게 때문에 라운치도 이거 슉청고 쉬버진 징게되기도 왔어 짐바 디깽게 차당 셈게 왈 때네 레서주 레서발 때네 드니 맞아 콜도 짐바랑 코르주도 대중에 참아 가인서 어다 나도 두번 쓰면 짐바 친실로고 로니부 데려다스다.
So those types of self-grasping minds, yeah, those self-grasping cognitions are wrong cognitions. They are deceiving cognitions. Yeah, they are cognitions which are totally discordant with reality. So exactly like a wrong cognition which believes that a horn of the rabbit exists. Yeah, so it doesn't exist at all. Yeah, so there is no inherent existent phenomenon, there is no inherently existent person. Still, those grasping cognitions, self-grasping cognitions are so powerful. They are very strong within us. And depending on those conditions, then we have strong attachment, strong aversion, and so on. And we accumulate karma and all the other causes and conditions of samsara will arise. So all of that comes from wrong cognition, which is self-grasping ignorance.
야. 다 유기내로 슬라인데 가상의 내로 가래. 가사를 셴베 풍비내로 가래스. 내로 쓰라고나 유지 타토바데레. 유루 타토바. 시루 타토바스. 타토바도 동반인 그런 시도 예스. 때네 따바 쌈도 예스. 파민기 파샤 쌈지 예스. 민기 파 마샤고 추 두샤고 체메스. 아데레. 와다 덴데기 유기내로 때라 딱 코나니 있으라고 해. 때 레버시나 때 야다바지 쉐바이나 공원에서 강인바다 쉐바이나 때라 공리 땜바이나 레다 뉴모 세베 타르스 타바도 주지.
So then the text goes on, and on the bottom of the page, page 56, where it says, okay, what is the mode of abiding of the objects? Yeah, so the mode of abiding of the person and the mode of abiding of the aggregates. Yeah, so in Tibetan, there are different ways to speak about the mode of abiding, but it's difficult to fully render slight differences between them. Like we have Yö, Tsul, Shiluk, Meluk, and so on. Yeah, so it's difficult to translate in English. Still, it means the mode of abiding, the mode of existence, the way things are, or we could say also reality as it is. Yeah, so there are different possible ways to translate them. So it means that any phenomenon, any person, any aggregate, and so on, is totally empty of inherent existence, true existence, ultimate existence, absolute existence, and so on. Yeah. So it is impossible for any phenomenon or any person to exist without being merely imputed by conceptual mind. Yeah, it is impossible to find any phenomenon or any person to exist from its own side without any mere imputation and so on. Yeah, so then if we, as Isolina says, if we really know that mode of abiding, if we really know that reality, that final mode of abiding of phenomena and persons and so on, and if we are used to that, if we have some familiarization with that, then it is possible to be liberated, as we said in this stanza 5 of the chapter 18th. Yeah, led on Yomo Sevetar, the ceasing of karma and afflictions is moksha, is liberation.
哪子些，他都不是，真正太切实实，把那道这边我们这边那了，看着小的是，太切的顶中日本第一呢，当然找他的绝不起算了。嗯，
Tsik di karare.
太切的顶中日本第一呢，把那道这个我们这边那了，
No.
顶中日本第一，太切是真正太切呢，顶中日本第一呢是，大完年把他这。当然找他去绝了去，当然找他去帮了去，他没有说图的，现在他得送中了，是吧？
So that's why we have a quote from the Madhyamaka Avatara from Acharya Chandrakirti, who says, then depending on that reasoning of dependent origination, then it is possible to cut at the root all the wrong views, all the bad views.
但顶中日吧是来源的，他得干什么修查去？顶中日吧是这个白呢，在这里嘛嘞，他你个来折图的是，打他来折图的，切他来折图的是，打他来折图的人性也把来折图的，人性没把倒图也了是。 切到了这把是看了为了是人性的看啥的，碰不人性的美是哪样的？他人都美是那个名的话是人性的美是那个样的是，加上人性的美是这个他人都要把粗短用的都是，顶着人把粗着用的都是，人性的东西的菜的，可对面人完全的东西了，他打他的追，切他的来追，你个来追用的都是吧？ 大家个他你个追用的都是。
So here, this perfect reasoning of dependent origination, yeah, is so important because it will help us to discard the two extremes, yeah, the extreme of absolutism and the extreme of nihilism. Yeah, so the extreme of absolutism is to believe that things and persons exist absolutely, yeah, in an absolute way, or in an intrinsic way, or inherent way, as you wish. Yeah, and the extreme of nihilism is not to believe that something doesn't exist. Yeah, it's not just that. It's to believe that a person or the aggregate or anything else is inherently non-existent. Yeah, is absolutely non-existent or ultimately non-existent and so on. Yeah, yeah, we could say inherently. That's better here. Yeah, intrinsically non-existent. Yeah, so those are the two extremes: to believe that something intrinsically exists or inherently exists or absolutely exists, and to believe that there is inherent non-existence. Yeah, so thanks to the dependent arising, the reasoning of dependent arising, we can discard both extremes.
야야 아주 대샤샹으로 가인스나 따들 망고 쉬우죠 그냥 망고 쉬우죠는 콘솔로 팽기 말했습니다.
That's Gela.
야.
So Gela is very kind to stop here because otherwise it could be too much information for all of us. Yeah, so we'll stop here for today.
Yeah, too much and not good for you also. 개줄라 강에 되도.
And the translator will have many problems.
Okay. Merci beaucoup. Thank you very
Thank you
much.
very much, Geshe-la. Thank you, the translators.
Muchas
for the translators.
gracias.
Muchas gracias.
Merci, merci, gracias, merci.
Merci, merci.
Muchas gracias. Merci beaucoup.
Merci beaucoup. Krishna.
Gracias.
Tachina.
Semjanango.
Chanchu Sencho Rinpoche,
Che,
Ma
ma
Gepa Ma
che fanchi, che
Gepa
fanchi
Nyamba Nyabaya, Kone
ne con tu pel guar show.
Kari Rawa, Kore
Always become the pendant de
Malin Chua,
Raman.
Kene Suma,
He wants to see him so he shop.
Shoda Siddhi
He patu te show she.
De nosotros hasta que finalice.
Merci, Geshe-la.
Merci.
Merci,
See you
Geshe-la.
next
Thank
week.
you, everybody.
Bye bye.
Thank you,
Bye
Christophe.
bye.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Good night,
Adiós.
everybody.
Good night, everybody.